Throughout the past few months, I've noticed that Crash has been getting bigger and bigger. Like, even bigger than during the build-up for the Insane trilogy. I've seen tons of amazing fan art, and I've made tons of new friends that I never would have made if Crash hadn't have come back. And I've seen tons of newcomers hopping on the Crash boat to try it out as they've never got to experience it as a kid. And while there's tons of great new Crash-related stuff coming out, there's also a few bad stuff. Like some of the fans. Now, we didn't hear much from them in the early 2010s when the series was dormant, but as soon as the Insane trilogy was announced and released, they came crawling out of their holes to start a war. A war between the originals and the remasters. Now, there's nothing wrong with comparing and contrasting, but it did go pretty far, as certain topics like what color a certain object was could apparently decide whether the remasters were good or not. And then when Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled got announced, every era got involved. Do Crash Bash next! No, Crash Bash sucks. Do Crash Twinsanity next. No, Twinsanity sucks. Yo, can we get the Crash of the Titans outfits in Nitro Fueled? No, keep Crash of the Titans out of my remaster. See where I'm going with this? This whole classic Crash versus modern Crash war sounds very familiar. In the early 2010s, Sonic was dealing with the same thing. And because Sonic Team was hearing so many different clashing and contrasting things from different fans of each era, they had no clue where to go with the series. They were experimenting and trying all sorts of different stuff and nobody was happy. That is until Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric popped up. Suddenly the fighting stopped. Yeah, people didn't like Sonic Boom, but they never got mad or fought over it because they knew it wasn't going to change the direction the series was going. The Sonic series had reached a point where there had been so many interpretations and incarnations that they could all be respected as their own things, kinda like the Ninja Turtles. You have the classic era, the Dreamcast era, the Boom era, and of course the modern era, which people have now split into two different eras because it's just been going on for so long, starting at Lost World. Don't you think that it's about time that we start doing that with Crash? We have the Naughty Dog era, the post-Naughty Dog era, the Radical era, and now the Insane era. Yeah, I'm not gonna tell you which one of these is better. I'm gonna tell you the strengths and weaknesses of each, so that way you can decide on your own which one you like more, and learn to respect each era as part of the franchise, even if you're not a fan of it. Of course, we're going to start off with the Naughty Dog era. All the games made by Naughty Dog, Crash 1, 2, 3, and Crash Team Racing. Now these are fantastic games. Smooth and tight controls, precise platforming, fun music, and a world full of personality. You can even compare how good they were to other 3D platformers coming out at the time. Mario's first step into 3D with Mario 64, and Sonic's with Sonic Adventure. Both groundbreaking for their time, but whenever someone talks about them now, they always have to mention how they're somewhat dated. Meanwhile, when we come to the Crash Bandicoot games created by Naughty Dog, they always have to mention how they still hold up to this very day. Well, for Crash 2 and 3 at least. Yep, even the Naughty Dog games aren't without their flaws, as the first game does get called out for being pretty dated. Thankfully, like Crash 2 and 3, the spin-off racing game, Crash Team Racing, was also unaffected by time, as it was able to reach critical acclaim that surpassed its rival at the time, Mario Kart 64. These games, while still showing some signs of age, have proven that they can withstand the test of time. Even if you personally don't like them because of their flaws, or you just think the hallway-like level designs are outdated, the Naughty Dog era should be respected as it created the franchise as well as tons of memories for all of us. Now we come to the post-Naughty Dog era, starting with Crash Bash. Yep, that's right. If you're one of the people wanting a Crash Bash remaster because you think it's the last Naughty Dog game that needs to be done, it's not even a Naughty Dog game. Naughty Dog had nothing to do with it, as they lost or gave up the rights to Crash Bandicoot after Crash Team Racing. Now, this era's biggest flaw is that it couldn't really do anything consistently, as the rights kept getting passed back and forth between different companies, Traveler's Tales, Vicarious Visions, Vivendi Universal, and so on. And none of them could really put the passion behind it that Naughty Dog did. For example, Crash Bash was just a party game, but it wasn't trying to surpass Mario Party. Meanwhile, Crash Team Racing was giving its all to surpass Mario Kart. If you're confused at what I mean, just look at Nitro Kart, which also failed, even though I still love it. Despite being on a next-gen console, it had 5 less tracks than Crash Team Racing, and it only increased the character roster by 1. It didn't go all out. Then there was Wrath of Cortex, which played it a bit too safe and close to the originals for something that was supposed to be next-gen at the time. Crash Twinsanity was a huge step in the right direction, but tons of development issues and lack of marketing caused it to fail as well. Now, just because all these games didn't live up to the Naughty Dog era ones doesn't mean they're all bad. They all have amazing qualities. Nitro Kart may not be CTR, but it's still fun, and people still enjoy Wrath of Cortex. It was a lot of people's introduction to the franchise as their first console was a PlayStation 2. And Crash Twinsanity is one of the most underrated games in the entire franchise as it manages to have its quality shine through its mountain of issues. Now it's okay to not like these games whether you think they don't live up to the originals, or you just personally didn't like all the experimentation going on. But the post-Naughty Dog era should still be respected as it tried its hardest to keep the franchise alive, and while the games in this era had more glaring flaws than the originals, they still managed to be pretty good. Next up is no doubt the most controversial, the Radical era. Now before I begin here, I want to get a misconception out of the way, one that even I fell for. The Radical era games did not kill the franchise. They sold very well and even more often than not did better critically than many of the post-Naughty Dog games. The franchise went dormant because Radical Entertainment got shut down after the failure of Prototype 2, and Activision didn't know what to do with the IP then. Radical even had a more traditional styled Crash Bandicoot game coming after Crash Mind Over Mutant, but they couldn't get to it, it was out of their control. Look up the game Crash Bandicoot Landed to see what I'm talking about. Now, Crash of the Titans and Crash Mind Over Mutant. These were both radically different games, pun intended, compared to what we were used to. Even for the experimental days of the post-Naughty Dog games. And the thing is, they're different, you could even say they're not Crash, but they're not bad. They're well polished, the gameplay works, and overall they're a very solid experience. They've even got plenty of content with all the different outfits and the stat system. And then Crash Tag Team Racing, while nothing like Crash Team Racing or Nitro Kart, was still pretty fun. Despite its broken racing mechanics, it was fun everywhere else. The overworld, the minigames, the battle mode, and once again, all the cool costumes and customizable options. The Radical era games didn't get backlash because they were bad, they were good. They just got backlash for being way too different and not recognizable as Crash. And as I mentioned before, they heard everyone's cries as their next planned game was a return to form for Crash. But bad things beyond their control happened. So it's okay to not like these games for being different, but it's unfair to cast them aside as not part of the Crash Bandicoot franchise and to accuse them of killing it. The Radical era should still be respected for doing its own fun little thing, and what it could have done for the series if Radical had not been shut down. And finally, we make it back to the current era, the Insane era, which is already off to a fantastic start. The Insane trilogy has received overwhelmingly positive reviews all across the board, and despite being out for just barely less than 2 years and being an exclusive for its entire first year, it was able to sell over 10 million units, several million over the original games and CTR. And with Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled releasing off the heels of it with insane hype behind it, it's also going to sell incredibly well. It's already looking like the Insane era is going to be the most successful critically and financially. Even the most stubborn of reviewers for the original trilogy have admitted that the Insane trilogy is the definitive way to play the trilogy, as it's improved its load times, added Coco, and 2 new levels. However, despite how safe and secure the franchise seems right now, there's a huge mountain of anxiety and fear leaning over us. And that's because the Insane trilogy's greatest strength is also its greatest weakness: nostalgia. We don't know what a brand new Crash Bandicoot game will bring to the table or if it will do well, and we definitely don't want it to get trapped in a remake purgatory. People are already begging for a remake of Crash Bash, but unlike the original trilogy and CTR, it's not seen as a fantastic game. People actually are blinded by nostalgia when it comes to that one. And if a remake does poorly, Activision will start losing faith in the series. So fingers crossed for a new game. Now, it's okay to not like the games in the Insane era, whether you think they're relying on nostalgia too much or you just don't think they can hold up to the originals. But the Insane era should still be respected for reviving the franchise, giving it new life, and introducing Crash to a whole new generation. And there you have it, each era of Crash Bandicoot. All are vastly different, even the Insane era, which is just a bunch of remakes. Each era is its own thing and has its own strengths and weaknesses to offer. Yes, even the Naughty Dog era. And you can like whichever one of them you want, or dislike whichever one of them you want. You just have to be able to respect that certain eras are a certain part of the franchise, even the Radical era. Just as the Sonic Boom game and Sonic Boom TV show aren't like anything else in the Sonic franchise, but they're still Sonic. Anyways, what's your favorite era of Crash Bandicoot games? Let me know down in the comment section below. LeopoldTheBrave, out.